Happy Wednesday, folks, and happy November. I think I'm here with you and Tucker. You're in the background. There you are. I'm so excited to be back here today because I haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks. Last week, if you tuned in, it was an audio event with the incredible Joa, and I really love both the audio and the video formats. Here we are. Today, our topic is visionary leadership. And I'm super, super excited to introduce in a moment Tucker. I'm terrible with last names, Tucker, so you'll have to pronounce it yourself when I bring you up on stage. But what I've been doing here on this platform for a couple of months now is just trying to introduce this audience into, I don't know, into ideas, meeting change makers. And as I delve into this a little bit more, I just meet the most incredible people. So I'm going to bring Tucker up on stage and let me see. If you aren't already telling me where you're from, please put in here where you're tuning in from today. I'm going to try to make sure I'm making the best of the comments. Tucker, let me bring you up. Tucker, how are you, sir?
I am phenomenal, Will. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. I've been a guest on this show plenty of times, and it's pretty fun to be up on stage with you today.
So today's topic is visionary leadership. So one of the things I do is when we talk about coming on to this show is all about my being able to introduce folks to this audience, which I think is just incredible. Just people who believe in what I believe in: kindness, leadership, being a decent human. And this universe brought me into Aaron Barrero's universe, and therefore brought me into your universe. So getting to know you through Aaron's work and OneStrive, which I think is great. And we're actually colleagues. I put that in an email this morning. We're like colleagues because we work with Aaron. That partnership is incredible.
At OneStrive, yes, we do.
It's really, really incredible. But today, I want to be able to ask you questions about what leadership means to you. But before we do that, why don't you introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll be quiet.
Absolutely. No, shout out Aaron. If you're not connected with Aaron Barrero, please get connected with that guy. He is an amazing connector. Yeah, my name is Tucker Bascom, and most of my career has been in the restaurant industry. For the better part of the last decade, I worked my way up from dishwasher up to line cook, server, and found an amazing opportunity with amazing business owners who gave me a chance to be an operating partner for their restaurant chain. And it was in that role that I realized there is a leadership crisis, particularly in the restaurant industry. But being on this platform, it's opened my eyes to realizing there's a leadership crisis in every industry.
Right.
And it opened my eyes to what can we do to fix this. So I started developing a leadership training program that ended up being wildly effective. In industry standards, we had a very low turnover, under 70% in the restaurant industry. That's unheard of. And we were doing it paying, minimum wage and not really offering any benefits, just because the state of our chain, we couldn't necessarily afford to do that so early on. But what it opened my eyes to, and the owner's eyes to, is that people don't leave jobs strictly because of money. There are many reasons people leave jobs. And in my experience, it tends to be due to experience in the workplace. So what the leadership program allowed us to do is create an amazing experience in the workplace that retained employees and kept them engaged, and more importantly, added to their life experience so they could go on and get jobs in fields that they, really wanted. So we sold that restaurant chain in 2021, and that's when I kind of branched off into this world of coaching and leadership. I dove in head first, and that's what I've been doing on LinkedIn for the last year, is taking my leadership development services and personal coaching to another level in other industries. That's what brought me here in the first place.
So Tucker, going back, I was once in some sort of leadership course, and we were asked about what was one of our biggest disappointments in life, in our careers. And I stated, and I still believe it a bit, that my biggest disappointment was that I was turned down to be a waiter at Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurant in
Mm.
my hometown. So I settled for fast food. I worked at Roy Rogers. And I have to tell you, while my dream of working at Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurant did not come to be, working in fast food was actually, I think, a foundation for everything that I started to do thereafter. So the way I see the food industry, or what I learned, was you're always on, you're always busy, you're always working. If you're not busy, you shouldn't be on the clock. You need to go out. You're learning service. You're learning to work with colleagues. You're learning about vendor shipments and all of this kind of supply chain issues. So I'm a big believer that everybody should probably work in the restaurant
Mm.
industry at some point. And I really do give credit for my approach to leadership and everything I did after that, from those early years, and the training that I received from my restaurant manager. He was a great guy, and he gave this
Mm.
like 16-year-old kid an opportunity to do this. So talk about that, like the
Yeah.
restaurant piece of it, the disciplines that you learned, and how that shaped your leadership and then helped you develop your training courses.
Of course. Yeah, I haven't worked in every industry out there. But what I know to be true for me and in conversations I have with people is the human condition is really not on display quite at the scale that it is in the restaurant industry. And what I mean by that is the restaurant industry, as a natural byproduct of what it does, the price that it sells at, it employs the most vulnerable members of society. And what you see are real human life stories, real struggles. You're working with people who statistically have a higher rate of addiction and substance abuse issues. We're hiring at the poverty level in many cases, and so what you're thrust into is a real microcosm of the human condition. And in order to navigate that effectively, you've got to become like a natural psychologist. You've got to become attuned to human behavior, and those skills, being able to read people and hold space for them and be present with them and listen to them, translates to every other industry. Unless you're working by yourself and you never talk to anybody ever for 40 hours a week, if you're communicating with people, these skills are so effective. And that experience informs everything that I do in my leadership training and my coaching.
So talking about leadership, right? I'm a teenager. I was given this opportunity probably because I was a warm body and they could fill the position, and I received the position. But knowing that it was up to me to do a good job, I was extremely shy, extremely introverted, and actually afraid of people my own age, like that awkward high school time in life.
Mhm.
And being pushed in, I was given tasks. I started in the dining room. I worked at the register. I worked in the kitchen, and I loved all of that. It broke me out of my shell. It was probably the lesson I needed to just, realize, okay, people are people. But
Mhm.
so I started to understand what it was like in an intense environment, right? A rush. And I'm sorry, I've worked in different industries: clothing, accessories, museums, attractions, all of that. No one is angrier than a hungry customer, right? People, when they want their food, there's nothing on a similar scale. I can
They're
tell you
different people. They're not the same individual.
completely. I'm a hangry person myself, so I totally get it. But the whole experience for me, as I said, shaped me. So that manager and the managers I had at the time, I don't remember formal training because it was just 100 years ago, but
Mhm.
there was something in the discipline. What did you take away from it, right? Because
Yeah.
you're juggling. It's the best of the backstage, on stage. You're a producer. You're a
Yep.
director. What was it that clicked with you to know, okay, I could see that shy guy over there or that loud person over there? How did you bring all the different personality types together to make it all work?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to take a step back, like defining leadership, right? What I believe leadership to be is it is a behavior in which you want to serve other people's best interests. So there's a few like implications in there. You have to behave a certain way. That's what leadership is. We have these leadership positions, we have these leadership roles, and people think that if you just get that title, then you're a leader. I would argue it's a behavior that you demonstrate, which puts you into roles in which you get to oversee people. So that's first and foremost. Second, being oriented in a way where you're serving people's best interests means you have to care about other people, you have to want to serve them, and you have to be engaged with them in a way to where you know who they are and you actually know what their best interests are. What do they want? What are their goals? Why are they even working alongside you? When you get those details down, then you're in a position to be a leader. And so in the restaurant industry, when human condition is on full display, you're staring at a line of angry customers and they've got their pitchforks ready and they need their food. How are you behaving so that you're leading the team behind you? They can all stay calm, cool, and collected.
Right.
And you're front facing, dealing with customers who have certain expectations. And if you've been in a restaurant within the last year, you know that restaurants are failing those expectations more times than not because of the chronic understaffing.
It's a huge, huge issue.
Exactly. So how are you behaving to overcome that challenge? So visionary leadership is a term that I ripped off of Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek, great, probably the original social media thought leader, if you know him. He's written the book, The Power of Why. Phenomenal read. Everyone should read it. He did a talk where he was talking about, and as far as the C-suite goes, the chief marketing officer, you know what they do. The chief financial officer, you know what they do. Chief operating officer, you know what they do. What does a chief executive officer do? His argument is that it's an ill-defined role. And so what he said, we need vision officers, chief vision officers.
That's so true.
A founder of the company needs to know what is the long-term vision for the company, and they hold everyone accountable in direction with where the company needs to go, as opposed to what I think most CEOs do is keep the board happy, make sure the investors are happy with their investment.
Right.
And so there's a conflict of interest there.
Right.
So bringing it back, I also don't like the term chief executive officer. I think we need visionary leaders who have a vision for the business and they align everybody in the organization to achieve that goal. And they also behave within their expectations at the same time. So there's not these conflicts of interest and being a hypocrite, which I think we can acknowledge there's too many leaders who maybe don't walk their own talk.
I think the pandemic in the last couple of years, I think highlighted this issue. And again, I think of it in terms of what structures there's always in life, right? We were talking a little bit backstage. There's always going to be times in life where there was a before and after. So the world before COVID and lockdowns and the world that we're coming after. I don't know if you can call this after, but it's a different world.
It's different.
The way that I see it, and I love what you just talked about, the CEO versus the CVO, the chief visionary officer, is that leadership has changed. And I think the spotlight is now on leadership, is that leaders need to lead with their humanity, with their kindness, with their empathy and their compassion. And not that all CEOs don't do that. That wasn't required prior to all of this. I think, well, it should have been required and it should have just been natural. But when you think of the places that you've worked, Tucker, and when I think of the people that I've worked for and I've been privileged to learn from, it's those with the vision that bring something out of you, because you can actually see what it is that all that chaos and that noise could turn out to be. So I love the way that you frame that. I believe the last couple of years, I wouldn't be on this show talking to you had I not gone deep within myself to think about what leadership means to me. And leadership to me is connecting with that kindness, and that it's connecting with the humanity. And so most, I would say, and I don't have any statistics, so somebody who's good with numbers and stats can challenge me on this, I suppose, or enlighten me on this. Most prior to what we've been living through, trying to reboot businesses, rebuild businesses, adapt to the consumer, the customer, the guest, the visitors' changed habits. need to understand the bigger vision. They
Mm.
only did what you said, is it's the board, it's the money, it's the press. And it was the last thing on your list was really worrying about the staff in the
Mhm.
way that I think the leader needs to. So if someone were to hire you and bring you on board, how do you address that, right? Because you could be with a great CEO or the head of a company, and they're going to need some help. How do they shift from that mindset of, okay, it's about the board, it's about the money, and it's about the press? How do you shift it to saying those things are important, and I don't take that away, but how do you make the staff as important as the rest of it? Tell me your thoughts on that. I'd love to know how you would approach that if I were your client, for example.
What a phenomenal question, and I think it's a question that needs to be asked more. Um, you made a really good point how coming out of the pandemic, you took a look within yourself and you asked yourself the question, what does leadership actually mean to me? And I think the pandemic caused a lot of people to take that introspective look because their worlds were shattered and all of a sudden it's just like everything pauses and you're like, where am I? And perhaps more importantly, who am I? So anytime someone brings me in to consult with them and they've got these retention issues, they've got too much turnover, their key staff members are leaving, which I think many businesses can relate with right now. The what I attempt to do is look the person in the eye and ask them, how are you doing? You know, how are you feeling about this? And when you can kind of get underneath the skin and get them to just pause the thoughts about money for a minute, get them to pause the thoughts of all the things that they have to do, their to-do list, and in short, in a nutshell, slow down and take a real look at when you were a kid, did you imagine you would be doing this? Right? 10 years ago, where did you think that you were going to be? And shine the spotlight on the leader because there's a saying, and I can't remember who said it, but the fish stinks from the head, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
there's an
the
issue,
fish rots from the head is how I know it. Right.
yes, exactly. You get the idea. If there's issues in the organization, any leader worth their salt who's behaving in a true leadership capacity is going to take accountability for that. So, if you're not taking accountability for the things going on in your organization, you're going to be really hard to help. But I know deep inside there's a human in there who does care, who will take accountability. And if you can get them to see on the other side of the fence what the organization could be doing, how it could be operating, the numbers that you could be achieving, everyone can win. Like this is an abundant reality, an abundant universe. Everyone can win. The investors can be happy, the leaders can be happy, and the team members assuredly can be happy. When you can paint that picture, get them to introspect and look a little deeper, like you did coming out of the pandemic. Human capacity for kindness is never ending. I mean, human potential is unlimited. They need to see that and get
Yes.
out of the firestorm happening in their head with all the worries and the fears. That's how I approach it: is deep conversation.
It's really difficult to change that shift, that paradigm, right? Because we humans are creatures of habit. And so the habits are broken, you pause, and then it makes most think. And I think that's another show, but I think that's probably what's happening with the issues around mental illness and people not knowing where to go. Like when you have the resources, and I'm blessed to have like the inner resources, but family and friends and a spouse around me that can help me through,
Mm-hmm.
what the world stopped and everything we knew was flipped upside down, and so you can create something great from it, or unfortunately it's created so much turmoil, and that's another show and another subject. But I wanted to go here. Joseph, my brother from Florida. Hey Joseph, great to see you. And really, Tucker, when the show is over, really go through the comments. I mean, it's totally international here. If I were to say hello to everybody who's popping up and name every country that's shown up, you wouldn't be able to speak. So it's really great. So thank you everybody who's tuned in live, and thank you for saying hello. But Joseph's comment here, the great resignation, turnover has cost organizations a staggering $233 billion over the last 5 years. So when you think of that, when I think of my former life, people coming and going and moving, organizations, corporations will be, well, that's just the way it is. There's opportunity. It's a new world and people change. But when you see some leaders that don't have the turnover, it makes you start to wonder, well, the salaries are pretty much the same. The benefits are the same. If you're looking within an organization, how come that department isn't doing the turnover the way others are? We need to, in order to make healthy organizations, healthy corporations, we need to understand leadership first. Yes, I think pay is utmost and so important in benefits, but if you don't have leaders who inspire you to come to work every day, if we worked in a physical office, Tucker, we would be spending more time together than we would be in our own living rooms. So how do you create that environment to get the work done, but make it a kind place?
Yeah. Well,
Bottom line, $233 billion is huge. So thank you for that, Joseph.
that's incredible stat, Joseph. I wrote that down. I know within the restaurant industry, turnover costs the average restaurant $150,000 a year. And when we're talking restaurants, that is like life and death money right there. I think people are just, they've grown a little cynical, right? But it's that intentionality of, do you care about the humans that you're working alongside? And it takes that that introspective look to dig deep and decide, you know what, I actually do want the people around me to be happy. Like I do care. And many times it actually takes physiological intervention, meaning you've actually got to facilitate like some breath work. You might have to introduce some very light meditation. Oculus VR headsets have this really cool app on them now where it actually guides you through a meditation, and you can't not meditate when you're in a virtual reality headset. Like, I know organizations who are actually rolling those out to create those experiences where you can slow your nervous system down and take a fresh look at the world with like, wow, I was completely at the mercy of my thoughts. I feel really good right now. How can I sustain this? And usually the answer is through genuine, kind engagement with the folks you're working alongside and who you're interacting with on a daily basis.
I think about this. I'll bring it to myself for a second. And when I'm thinking about this in a way about leadership. I didn't understand kind leaders or empathetic leaders until after I left the job I was in for almost 30 years, right? The organization I was in for over 30 years. And as I was able to reflect, I knew something within me changed, right? The pandemic made me stop and I had to start thinking about time left on earth and how I wanted to use my time. So I made a decision to let go of something that I truly loved. I mean, I absolutely loved what I did and I loved the people that I worked with. I really did. But I knew I had to do something new. Now I can still visit my old place of employment. And when that human connection of people that I worked with, and I'd realized that because I'd been there for so long, being able to still have connections to people that maybe I hired into a position 20 years ago, and you still have the connection. How are you? You follow each other on social media. To me, that made me understand, yes, I was a leader. Was I always the most popular? Probably not. Did I make mistakes? Tons. Because if you're a leader and said you've never made a mistake, then you're not really a leader. You learn, you grow, you make these mistakes. So that's why I'm so passionate about kindness in leadership. I only showed up doing what I thought was the right thing, being human. Right? I call it kind. People may understand that in a different way. But that's why I think I was drawn to you, Tucker, that visionary leadership. And when anybody follows, and I'm being mindful of time because we have about 5-10 minutes, if you could stay a little bit longer. You're more than, hey, I'm just the coach and I'm going to teach you how to have a successful business. When you really look at what you do, and I'll put it here on the screen, but I hope people reach out and connect with you. Your tuck taps, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
But you do it in such a way that it's business, it's coaching, but it's personal and it's contemporary. I love what you do.
So
How do we make more leaders like you?
That's very, oh man, I appreciate the kudos so much, Will. Thank you. And the fact that you subscribe and you receive my Tuck Taps means the world. So just being mindful of time, super short, quick story. When I was a dishwasher, 10 years ago, I was in first of all, I was a dishwasher because I had dropped out of school and I needed money to pay for a DUI that I had just gotten. Really, really tough time in my life.
Right.
And I was not in a good place. It was through free information on the internet, being in a desperate place and just seeking assistance anywhere that I could find it.
That you're not alone. You're not alone.
I came across some free transformational information that helped put me on a trajectory to where I could dig myself out of the hole that I had been in. And so my intention with Tuck Taps and the Sustain Network, if anyone goes to www.thesustainnetwork.com, there's a well-being library that exists on the site. My intention is I just want to put that information out there for someone who might be in a similar situation that I was in, who just needs something, anything, free, engaging content that might be the light bulb that helps somebody and take better steps tomorrow. And that's all I needed. So that's the whole reason why I do it. And I know that there's some subscribers in the comments too. Thank you everybody who supports Tuck Taps. And if you're not subscribed yet, please reach out and I'll get you a link.
They put a smile on my face. I think you probably send them on Tuesday. Is it true? Or
every Tuesday? Yep.
Tuesday, Tucker, right? Wednesday, Will. So Tuck.
There we go.
This morning I was catching up on some messages because I'm so far behind, and there you popped up, and I just went through it, and it was just put a smile on my face. It was engaging, so I appreciate that. We still have a little bit of time. Everybody needs to connect with Tucker because he's just phenomenal, and it's just more than coaching, but you will get something out of it. You're also a really good human being, and tell the audience what we were talking about before, Movember, because those that know you would notice there's a little change to your face.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out David Hansen for mentioning meditation practices. That's a huge part of my practice. I love that. My connection, David Gardner, also in the Aaron Barrero universe, right? Connected through him. David Gardner posted a really inspiring post about losing his father in 2011 to cancer. And
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and him and his brother were just thinking of ways that they could, raise money for cancer research and also just remember their dad in a really fun way. And their dad had an extraordinary mustache. And so in the spirit of Movember, I shaved off my facial hair. David is doing the same. And we're just trying to drive awareness to causes that matter. I'm kind of championing men's mental health. David is championing all of the things, but particularly cancer. And we're going to be growing mustaches together during Movember and hopefully driving some donations to support those causes.
That's wonderful. And I'll add it into the comments here because I did see that post from David. And I had commented that I think this originally started, Tucker, with supporting those who suffered from prostate cancer. I think the origins. And my dad suffered for many, many years, and he passed away about 5 years ago. So every November, I think about doing that in support, but maybe this is the year. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this is the year I can do it.
It's only November 2nd.
Right, exactly. And I haven't shaved, as you can tell. So maybe I still have time. I can maybe do it. But I think, again, going back, those causes, who we are. You're a coach. I'm a coach. Aaron's a coach. We're building a community. And what I love about working with you and what we're trying to do here is we are trying to build this sense of community. And it isn't a community of competition, which I just absolutely love. You see in the comments here, and I can't wait to watch, read them all. It's supporting one another. Some of us do the same thing. Some of us do very different things. But the idea that you can, in this virtual world, lift one another up and support one another, I think is just so great. So I want to ask you one of the final questions here. What's your favorite story or tell us a story about a situation in which you learned the most, and not one of those where somebody said, "Oh, Tucker, you're great." What was a situation that you learned the most where you were out of your comfort zone? I would love
Uh,
to hear a story like that.
I love this. So the first thing that comes to mind, if anyone who's been following me for any length of time, you know that I like ice baths. It's
Oh yes, that's true.
a very intentional practice that I do, and I dip myself in ice cold water, and it's I stay in there for 4 minutes. It's amazing. So I picked this habit up of doing ice baths a few years ago, and in my final year as an operating partner in the restaurant industry, I was in a nightmare restaurant situation in which I had about 4 call outs. And this is a drive through. So high pressure, high stakes, lots of customers. I had like 4 call outs,
Oh,
and I was left with 2 new hires, one of which had a disability where they couldn't hear out of one ear. And the other individual was on the autism spectrum. So it was a really challenging shift, and we were drowning. And then the health inspector walked in. So if you've been in the
and the
restaurant,
register went down. I'm sure the POS system went down. I'm sure.
it felt like we were dying a very slow death. Anyway, what I learned in that situation, and referencing my ice bath practice, it didn't matter what was going on outside, because I had the perspective of what was most important was supporting my 2 new hires who were in this situation with me, and communicating to customers in a way to where they understood the context of what was going on.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, they got it. If I could give them the time of day and communicate clearly, they understood. And my team members were able to thrive in the situation and learn something about themselves because of my communication to them. And this happened because I was present in the moment, not thinking about the infinite other things I could have been thinking about in that situation. That's, in my opinion, what every leader can attain, is that kind of presence and intentionality. No matter what industry you're in, that's possible for everybody.
No, that's fantastic, because you made me think of a few scenarios where there's those big, short staff, crazy amounts of people around, and everyone's looking at you, right? When you're the leader, the manager, the director, when you're in charge, they're looking at you. And I don't know if you have that same approach, but my entire life working in the public realm, I always treated being in that public realm and with my staff as being on stage, not
Mm.
acting, but you realize there is a calm that one needs to project, and a we will get through this even in the worst of situations. So that situation that you described, I can totally relate to.
And
And
it could
it's
be you're
what
in a boardroom
leaders do.
having to answer for why your business has fallen short of expectations for 6 months in a row. It could be you're a marketing officer and your campaign just failed miserably. Like these situations translate across all industries, but your leadership capacity is determined by how intentional you are about developing yourself and shining a light on your team members to make sure they're supported.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Well, I see we passed the half hour, so I thank you for staying a little bit longer. I just enjoyed this conversation, and they go so quickly. Um, Joseph, Michelle, there's a whole bunch of people out there supporting you, and lots of comments that I hope you read later. Tucker, I can't believe that this is my 22nd episode, right? So this is season one of Wednesday with Will, the 22nd episode. To think that I could find 22 people who would share the camera with me and talk is pretty incredible. And this season's coming to an end in just a few weeks, so there's only a few episodes left. And so I will reboot the series in January when
In
I'm.
Brazil, right?
Yep. I'll rebrand it, Will in Brazil. I'll come up with something fun and change the graphics to be a little bit more tropical. But I just wanted to thank you for taking the time, and I just love having these conversations about leadership. And that if there's anything I can do to help you, just let me know. I hope anybody who's watching this live or watching the replay reaches out and connects with you, because the world needs people like us, Tucker. And it's not our egos that we're talking about, because that's not what you and I are about. We need to have leadership that understands people. And I know the folks in the comments here and the people who watch consistently each week understand that. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I thank Aaron Barrero, the amazing Aaron Barrero, who brings us all together, and follow him as well. I'm going to go through some of these comments. Final word goes to you, Tucker. What do you want to leave this audience with? What kinds of words of wisdom do you want to share?
I think there's probably so many people from so many different walks of life who are in different situations in their life that they're dealing with, and I think every person should understand that they're capable of more than they were led to believe. Our society isn't structured to bring out that treasure that every single person has within them. I just want everyone to know that whatever their wildest dreams are, they can have them. It is more than possible. There's a treasure within you. Just recognize it and seek to bring it out of yourself. You've got a community of people who want to support you in doing that.
Wonderful. I thank you, and I can't wait for our next conversation. We'll do one again very soon.
Hey, absolute pleasure. Thank you, Will.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and join me next week as we bring another guest. Only 3 more episodes left. Maybe we should do a series, a bunch of commercials on that. But thank you.
I can't wait for Will in Brazil.
Yeah, I'll find exotic backgrounds. Make sure I have Wi-Fi. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Tucker. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye now.